The Big Story on 105.9 The Region.
Well, at 9:45 on this Friday morning, the 1st of December, without question, the big story is housing and affordability in the region, in the province. To talk more about it, who better to speak about it than the 23rd Prime Minister of Canada, the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, joining me on the phone. Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you for joining us.
What a pleasure to be on, Jim. And before we get into it, I really want to say congrats to the region for 10 years. I know that's coming up in a couple of weeks. So really great to see you guys going so strong.
Well, thank you very much, and we greatly appreciate it. And it kind of leads into our main theme today. 10 years ago, when we launched the station in York Region, affordability in housing wasn't a huge concern, but it feels like it snuck up on us, and so many listeners are emotional when we speak to them, like they can't afford rent for their children going to college, or they're having trouble paying their mortgage. What can you and the government do to help people who are struggling?
Well, 10 years ago or 8 years ago when we got into government, we started to roll up our sleeves and saw challenges on housing. Particularly, we saw that the federal government had to get back into the business of housing because the previous Conservative government didn't. And what that meant was we started making investments that are coming through. But it's been clear that particularly in the past years, post-pandemic especially, housing prices have skyrocketed. And a big piece of it is lack of supply. There just haven't been enough places either to rent or to own built. There hasn't been enough densification around subway stops and transit, and that's why we've created the Housing Accelerator, which works directly with municipalities. Places like Vaughan and Richmond Hill have already moved forward with millions of dollars on accelerating zoning and densification to get more things built now and into the coming years. We're talking about over 100,000 new units over the coming years. These are the kinds of things that are going to make a huge difference right across the country.
I know, Mr. Prime Minister, Lionel, one of our listeners, wants to ask you, it's a possibility in the meantime that we can have longer mortgage terms to help reduce payments, because we see those in other countries where you can get 10, 15 or 20-year mortgages and sort of lock it in, not have to worry about your payments doubling or tripling if the rates go up.
Yep, that's exactly something that we're moving forward on. We just announced in our last week's fall economic statement a mortgage charter that outlines the rights of homeowners to renegotiate, to extend the amortization, which means you'll be paying your mortgage for more years, but you'll be paying less every month. And that's something that we know we can do to reassure people that they're not going to lose their homes, even as we're in difficult times right now economically around the world. And as things get better, which they will, people will still be in a good position.
Speaking of the Right Honourable Justin Trudeau, the 23rd Prime Minister of Canada, once upon a time, your father, Pierre Trudeau, and Joe Clark were the complete opposite ends of the political spectrum. But I can remember them finding unity and cooperation, whether it was to bring hostages home from Tehran, to work to make Canada better. How do we as Canadians, not just politically, but just in everyday society, work together to get things done, to make this country more affordable?
Well, listen, maybe it was because of my father's example and influence, but I can say that specifically Joe Clark and Brian Mulroney remain people whose perspective and counsel I value quite significantly, and that's probably helped me reach out across the aisle. We've managed to move forward on some really big initiatives. I think of the work we've done with Conservative premiers on cutting childcare fees in half across the country, moving forward with historic investments in healthcare, moving forward on protecting the environment in cooperation with premiers right across the country. These are things that I'm happy to do because, especially in Ottawa these days, there really is a big polarization, especially coming, though, from the Conservative Party. Like, I've demonstrated the capacity to work with the NDP, obviously, on moving forward on big things like dental care for hundreds of thousands of kids who couldn't afford it before. We're working with the Bloc on protecting the French language. The Conservatives, they're in a bit more of a divisive frame that's challenging, but we're always there to work for them. them, and we were disappointed that they chose not to vote with us for Ukraine free trade, for example, which was disappointing to everyone. But we're going to continue to be open and inclusive as best we possibly can while we support and protect Canadians.
Mr. Prime Minister, I know you were in Pickering and Whitby yesterday focusing on community small business. You're often in the region, York region here, or different areas of the country. When you are out and about in these community events and meeting constituents, you must feel some of the emotion and some of the frustration and anxiety Canadians feel just wondering about the holidays. How are they going to pay for things going forward?
Yeah, grocery prices keep coming up, and that's a really big issue for so many families.
What can be done, though?
We brought in the heads of the big grocery firms to talk about what they can do to stabilize prices, what they can do around price matching, price freezes, discounts on staples, things like that are going to support people through this challenging time. One of the things is, though, it's a challenge here in Canada, but it's a challenge around the world, and it's linked to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. It's linked to supply chain disruptions that have lingered since the pandemic. These are challenges that we continue to step up on. We're working with agricultural communities and producers across the country to innovate, to support them, to move forward with greater opportunities. There's lots of things that we're doing because I hear it, and it's heartbreaking. So many families are just squeezed in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we're an independent radio station. We're thrilled to be about to celebrate our 10th anniversary, Mr. Prime Minister. But for us and other small businesses in Canada, it's tight. It's a lot of belt tightening, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And that's one of the things that we've seen. But at the same time, and even as you're celebrating, as businesses are getting through these tough times, we see the best of Canadians coming forward. We see people stepping up and being there for each other and leaning on each other. We see people being generous, people putting in that extra work. We're focused on being there to support small media, to small independent media, because that's super important, but also support small businesses in all the ways we can, because we know that it's going to get better. Inflation is coming down. Interest rates seem to have stabilized, and it looks like the Bank of Canada is going to start bringing them down hopefully next year. These are the things that are going to show that the fundamentals of the Canadian economy, being building more housing, building a strong, inclusive, open society that's bringing in people at a time of labor shortage, remaining optimistic about the future, not throwing up our hands and saying, oh, it's all just broken, it's all terrible, saying, yeah, it's tough, but we can do this. We've done this before as Canadians. We roll up our sleeves and lean on each other in the tough times. We're there for each other. We're supporting each other, and we're going to get through this. So hang in there, celebrate your 10th anniversary, and businesses across the York region can know that it is going to get better because we are all focused on getting there together.
Mr. Prime Minister, I know you're tight for time. I greatly appreciate your insight today. I have to say, for a Montreal Canadiens fan, you're a nice guy. I really appreciate you joining us.
Well, I won't hold your partisanship against you either.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. All the best over the holidays.
Thanks, Jim.